Hello, welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Sydney. I can be found on Ravelry as Sydneyknits, on YouTube as the Feral Housewife, and if you need to email me, you can email me at theferalhousewifepodcast@gmail.com. So welcome back. Most everybody would be new at this point, so if you're new, I appreciate if you would hit the like button if you are enjoying it, and the subscribe and notify. It'll help the channel with the algorithms. Though I don't completely understand all the algorithms, it is somewhat helpful. If you're listening to the audio component and would like to watch the video component, it's on YouTube. The Feral Housewife, it has the same logo as the audio portion. I just extract the audio. So I try to be as descriptive as I can verbally for the people that aren't necessarily watching but are listening. So I'm in the yarn area. We had quite a significant amount of snow, so if you hear noise, that's where it's from. And so like I've mentioned before, I live in the United States in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. We have 6 children, a few farm animals here and there, and what have you. So let's get into it. I have one finished object, nope, 2 finished objects. What I've been doing, works in progress, and just a very small acquisition. Not a heck of a lot in that department. So the finished object is what I'm wearing. It is the Comfort Cardi. Let me stand up so you can see the detail pocket. Knit in a little contrasting, and I think they call it's 2 different things. On Ravelry, it's a little ball of leftovers that I had from it. On Ravelry, if you just heard something, I dropped my acquisition. We'll get to that later. It's listed as the not creature comfort. I knit that a long time ago. The Comfort Cardi or comfort pullover. It's in my project notebook on Ravelry, but the pattern itself is only available through a kit from Tidal Yarns, and it's the high-low cardi, or high-low pullover. Sorry, I want it to be a cardigan, maybe. So it's only one size, so that would be my downside on it, is that it's not necessarily size inclusive, although I consider myself to be fluffier. So I suppose you could size it up. It's knit from the top down. It's a raglan increases. So what you would run out of if you purchased as a kit is yarn, because let me reach up and where the yarn lives. This is the basket of like scraps and bits and bobs. So this is all I have left of the gray, and this is all I have left of the contrast. So when you pick out your colors, I bought mine at Rhinebeck because I wanted to see if I really wanted it. But at any rate, when you pick out your colors, I would say you would have to get another skein of the main color way. It's a seed stitch. Initially, what I was thinking is to weigh this and split it in half and pull back my seed stitch cuff and knit a little more and then add some length. But because I wear this sweater almost as outerwear over a linen dress, the shortness on the sleeve is not something that bothers me, because it's actually not short. It's just I typically knit my sleeves a lot longer because I like them to come down to about here. I've just realized I have soot on my hands from the fireplace downstairs, but I usually knit them longer. So the yarn is a 2-ply. It's considerably a rustic feel. I read online that Tidal Yarns has their yarn spun at the Green Mountain Spinnery, and I don't know if that's true for all their yarns. I would have to ask, but I could see that it has a very similar feel. Not, and I don't mean the wool, I mean the plying. So it sounds like that to me. I have not blocked it. I just wore it and the other day, and I wore it again. It has a split hem, and so the hem is flipping up. So I'm really hoping that will block out. I've had sweaters where it has blocked out, and then I've also had sweaters where I felt like I was battling it. I went down a needle size when I went to the seed stitch, which was as per the pattern instructions. I don't usually, or don't always do that. Sometimes I'm a bit of a lazy knitter, won't get up and go get the other needle or what have you. And I almost feel like if you don't change the needle size, that can happen. So at any rate, I don't know where we were about what I was going to cast on next in the last episode or not. So I'll just tell you what I did. I cast on Vintersol by Jennifer Steingrass. And so here is the yoke, and down to, let me unpin the hem. This hem was also flipping up, and nothing against the pattern, just probably me. This is the base of the sweater. So it has a colorwork yoke and a colorwork base. I am knitting this in the practice yarn from White River Junction Mill, and these are the natural colors. So I wasn't sure. I knit the body, got the body done. This is less than a week. I think these are size 6 or size 7 needles. I think six. The contrasting colors, I was running low on the gray. So the main body is the chocolate color, and then the color work yoke is gray and cream white color. And so what I opted to do, because the yoke is not a rib up there, it's an applied to stitch I-cord, I went ahead and weighed the little bit of gray I had after I knit the color work portion on the sleeve. I weighed what I had left, and then I knit this applied I-cord. And so what I figured is if I had enough to knit the other sleeve, then I would use the applied I-cord in the gray as the bind off on the sleeve, and it would match the bind off on the neckline and match the color of the bind off on the body. So I did. I had 14 grams when I knit the I-cord, and then I had 9 grams remaining. I don't think I would have had enough to do the 1.5 inches of 2x2 ribbing that the pattern called for. So what made this pattern a little more interesting for me as a knitter to knit was it is provisionally cast on and knit from the base of the yoke upward, bound off, and then you're picking up the sleeves and the body from the provisional cast on and knitting down. So having that hybrid, I've knit a top down color work, I've knit top up color work, and not color work as well, bottom up and top down, but I haven't done it that way. So I'm probably going to have to wind this one into a ball, this other skein of the chocolate colorway into a ball to finish the sleeve, and then I will have this much left over. I actually went and got more yarn because it's not like there's a dye lot, it's their practice yarn. So when it's gone type deal as far as like what fleece they threw in to make this. So I figured, well, let me get it and it's a rustic wool. I have, the sheep definitely were in a field because I picked out some vegetable matter, quite a significant amount. Not an amount where I'd be like, oh, I don't want to have that. I just remembered there's another FO. Let me pause this and grab it. Okay, I just called the kid. Oh, I'm going to have to combine the videos. I forgot to show the... So, any rate, so I got 4 extra skeins, which technically that means I didn't need any, probably. So I will keep it, or I will send it to a friend as like a gift. I don't know. It will live amongst the stash yarn. So I'm hoping that I will be done with this sleeve tonight, this other sleeve, and then I will cast on my next project, but we'll see. So that's where we are with that. The 2 FOs I forgot to mention. This one I forgot to mention last time. This was a little kit that I picked up in Rhinebeck. It's for either a child size or adult size. You can knit either. Little colorwork, stranded colorwork hat with ear flaps with a simple single crochet edging, and the little sheep with the garter ridges are adorable. And so I had finished that, but I had forgotten to even talk about it because it just went in the mudroom in the cubby for my youngest to wear. So this is the FO I forgot about. This is the Forager Sweater by Melody Hoffman. And B Mandarin, I believe, is what she is on YouTube. So this is knit, I believe I knit it with the recommended needle size. It's knit for my eldest daughter. It is Malabrigo with a strand of the Farmer's Daughter silk mohair. And I had run out of the silk mohair, and I was thinking, oh, I could just get another one. And when I finally went to do that, I couldn't. I ended up exchanging messages with a ravelry, yes, who had just a little bit left of her skein. And she was kind enough to send it to me, and I sent her, like Venmo'd her some money for the shipping and what have you. So that was there. Then, so that finished that project off. I have 1 skein of the Malabrigo. I ended up having to find more of the Farmer's Daughter silk mohair blend, and I have a little more of that and like a half skein more of that of another Malabrigo in that colorway. So I don't know, it'll go in the I'm not sure what to do with it section. But at any rate, so I needed a sock on the needles, and I grabbed a Zabber ball that was been in my stash from when I had 2 kids, and I have 6 now. So, and my youngest is gonna be 4 in the beginning of summer. And I started knitting on it while the kids were at our homeschool group. And you may have heard the 4-year-old screech. And I got a considerable amount done, about this much done. And I didn't like the fabric it was creating. I didn't like the yarn. When I went to slip it, I was over my foot. I was knitting top down. That's typically how I'll knit a sock. I didn't like the fit, and I was like, I'm not going to suffer, or it's not suffering, but I'm not going to not enjoy something that I should be enjoying for another 3 inches of a ankle of the sock, and then a foot, and then a whole nother sock. So I frogged it in the car. And I cast on with Lichen and Lace Sock Club. This is the Afterglow colorway, and it was the January color. And so it's like a creamy base and has bits and spots of green and almost like little fireworks. So I started the Hermione Everyday Sock, which I don't know if I'm going to continue that on the top of the foot after I turn the heel, but I'll make that decision when I get there. So I cast this on what is it called? 9-inch needles, 9-inch Chigo that I had bought to try. And I didn't have, a lot of people have said their hand cramps, and I cramped when using that sort of thing, or that sort of needle size. And I didn't have that. I watched a few videos on how to hold the needles so that you wouldn't have that issue. But I just couldn't get in a rhythm. Now, I have read that some people struggle with knitting with them when they're doing complicated stitches, but I don't know that a knitting purling rib or a modified rib is, or what have you, broken seed stitch or any of that is going to be count. So what I thought I would do is, if I decide to knit the foot as it just straight stockinette, I might switch back over to them and see if they may be worth it. So that's where we are with that. And then the other project, I think I talked about it. I was going to cast on a vest, and in my hand spun, this is fiber that I bought at Rhinebeck many years ago. It is merino and silk, and it is a cranberry is the name of the colorway. I want to say it was like mulberry fibers or something. I don't even remember. But it's knit from the bottom up. So I was making some progress, and I started to look at what I was in the middle of doing for one of my daughters, which would be like a Tomton jacket from Elizabeth Zimmerman, but I modify the pattern to make it larger for her because she's not a toddler. Hold on while I grab the yarn that fell. She's not a toddler anymore, and wanted something like a cardigan like that. And so I was kind of knitting along on it, but I was finding the weight of the yarn, because garter stitch eats a ton of yarn, and the size of the needles. When I was knitting it on US size 10s, it was the drape of the fabric and the spacing of the stitches was a little too much. It was a little too loose of a gauge. And when I brought it down to the 9s, it made, like, I needed something in between, which didn't exist. But the 9s were more difficult for my hands to hold as a needle, and were also, I just dropped a stitch, also made the fabric pretty dense. And between that and the garter stitch just eating that yarn, and the yarn is lovely. It's Yarn Over, which is a recycled yarn from Green Mountain Spinnery here in Vermont. And I just wasn't knitting on it. I was knitting like a row of it or two a night, and then that's all my hands could handle on it. So I thought, I bet she'll like this yarn that I'm working on, and this is a dream to knit with. So I wouldn't have had enough to do a full sweater for myself of what I spun. It's just out of frame. But I would have enough to knit a sweater for her. So what I decided to do is using the yarn calculations, not yarn, but sweater calculations in Knitting Without Tears by Elizabeth Zimmerman, is I determined what I had cast on here and what my gauge was, her measurements, and what I would need to cast on for the sleeve. So I'm going to knit the body up to about 15 inches, which will take me to where I want that underarm portion to be, because she wants it a little longer of a cardigan. And then I'm going to knit the sleeves, and then join the sleeves. And then I hope to do a color work yoke. Now, part of me, the purist in me, let me grab this off the floor, wants the color work to be hand spun. But the logical person in me knows that that might not be feasible. So I think just fiber content would be reasonable. So I had in the stash left over some Malabrigo Mecha, which is a little bulkier, but it's a single ply. And even though it says bulky, I have not found it to bloom out. And I really think it would make the yoke fine. No, I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna say I'll swatch and see, but I'll probably decide and just throw something in there. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I might go through my bips and bobs up here and may found something else. But what I am going to pepper, the color work pattern that I'm going to put there is going to be the same color work chart that I'm going to use for my sweater. And let me see if I can see if there's a picture here that doesn't divulge. There, I'll cover it up. So this is another Jennifer Steingrass pattern, and it has, I don't know, roses and what have you on the yoke. And so the lace repeat, the color work repeat for it is how many? It's a 20 stitch repeat. So I'm going to be knitting it over 200 stitches basically. So it should work out fine. The downside of it is going to be because I was doing one thing and now I'm doing another. In order for me to steek, I'm going to lose some of that color work in the center. I can go ahead and swap in a garter stitch space down the center, which I think I will do just so I have a visual, and then I can just follow that bump for the part that I've knit below it in stockinette and follow along and have a good idea. So one of the groups that I'm in on Facebook, there's been a lot of talk about steeking, and steeking is my preferred method. And I know there's some new books out on color work where a lot of the patterns are knit flat, and it's an interview I saw with one of the designers said that it was making it more approachable for newer knitters. However, my personal experience has been that it is not easier to knit the garment flat, a color work garment flat at all. And while you can do it, wouldn't it be more advantageous to knit something that's going to stay in the round and then work up to steeking, than trying to purl and strand and maintain tension all at the same time? So I don't know where I stand on that, and I'm not a designer, so I don't have to make those decisions on how to make my process more approachable or better for newer knitters or what have you. But so if you are newer, I definitely am finding the way that's most comfortable for you to knit it. But if you can at all knit in the round for color work, there's a reason why, in my opinion, why generationally it's been done that way. It is a more approachable and fluid way of doing that. So and then I burst through the bottom of 2 socks this week. Now these socks are probably, you'll see the toe repair. These socks are 15, no, 11 years old or so. So I just picked up and knit with some scrap yarn from the scrap yarn land and went ahead and fixed that. So what is next? What is like the next project? So the Jennifer Steingass sweater, let me pronounce it proper, Steingass. And I believe it's Sea Grove, Sea Love, Sea, it's not written on this one. It's written on the 2 pages that aren't upstairs with me. I'm gonna knit that. I cast on, and the reason I cast on is because my eyes are not as good as they once were, and I didn't want to be fiddling with a cast on this evening if I do finish the sleeve of this one, and fiddling with a cast on and counting and with low light. So what I decided to cast on with is the Nutidin, because I'm casting on at the sleeve. And so this is a Nutidin. It is a ball that is wound using 2 strands of unspun Nutidin. And so the yoke of the sweater, the ribbing at the yoke, the ribbing at the sleeve, and the ribbing at the hem, maybe not the hem, I don't know, will be this Nutidin. And then it will be these cakes of unspun Norwegian wool. So this heathered gray, and then the other has little bits of Angelica spun into it. Not spun, but drafted into it. Yes. And I can feel a lot of spinning wool, Sydney. A lot of oils still on the fiber. Did you just hear that? Anyway, so those are going to be held doubled. I'm thinking I will wind not a center pole ball in it, but wind a ball of the 2 like the Nutidin is, or I may pull from 2 cakes. We'll see. The other option I have is to take some of this, well, now it's like it's spreading out everywhere here, some of this Plymouth tweed that was left over from a friend's project here, and it's a Plymouth tweed, and I'm thinking I may knit my daughter a sweater, Cricket. It's I saw it at the Green Mountain Spinnery booth at Rhinebeck, so I may do that, but we'll see. I'm not exactly sure. She's not wearing sweaters a lot around the house. She doesn't wear them out typically. Let me grab this off the floor. She has a coat that I sewed and hand embroidered for her and that she wears quite frequently. So I don't know if I know that if I got this other sweater and with the unspun and the Nutidin off the needles, I plan on steeking it. I will put a center steek band in it since I am planning ahead, and but I'm casting on a sleeve, so I don't need to even consider how many stitches I'm going to add or what have you. Typically when I do a sweater that I'm converting from a pullover to a cardigan for a steek, I usually add 5 stitches on a worsted weight, or maybe even a DK. I have a video on here where I'm steeking the throwback sweater, And the reason I used the machine for that steek is the wool that I'm using, or that I had used for that, was a superwash. It's Madeline Tosh, and it doesn't grip onto itself in the same way that a really woolly wool rustic yarn would. So when I steek this unspun, I may go ahead and needle felt that along where I'm going to steek. And so if I do a different technique for that, I will surely post another little video. I linked the video I had on a Facebook group because the question was brought up about if you would reinforce it with machine stitches. The other steek I've done with machine has been a pattern that was from Schoolhouse Press, which is Meg Swanson and Elizabeth Zimmerman, and that was a color work, all over color work, and there was a steek for the arm, the set-in sleeve, and a steek for the cardigan. So that was just like, we cut the heck out of that knitting. And that I knit in Barocco Vintage, which has some acrylic to it. It was knit for my now eldest child, who just got the Forager sweater. But when I knit it for her, she was 5. So, anyhow, so that I definitely reinforced because the acrylic isn't going to grab onto anything. It was acrylic and wool. So I had an acquisition, very small one, I'm sorry for the crinkling, from the, it's inverted, from the Woolly Thistle. And I had worn and here's a little sweater closure. I had worn a wrap style cardigan that was last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think it's been. And I was using a shawl pin, and I think I mentioned, and if I didn't, I'm remiss and should have, that it's very difficult for me to wear like a shawl pin and continue on my day-to-day activities, like grab logs for the fire. Like, I'm stabbing myself with a shawl pin. So these Norwegian sweater closures, they're pewter and they clasp, and it's not a buttonhole on your sweater or your garment, and I think it's going to be a good option. I'm sorry about them being particularly rambunctious today. I think it's going to be a really good option for that process for me, is for that particular sweater, and perhaps others, I don't know. So I put a few things in my Ravelry queue this week. I was looking at a lot of Plötulopi patterns because of the cakes of Norwegian wool that I had. I was trying to find what I thought might fit in there. I wasn't sure whether I was going to knit it single or held double. And actually, I'm still not 100% sold on that it's going to be double. The Nutidin is definitely smaller. Yeah, the Nutidin is half the size, almost, I think. Let me see. My kids are jumping around downstairs, and on the old wood floors, I hear it, and it's so distracting to me. Any rate, so that is the Norwegian, and then the Nutidin is about that. I guess it's about the same. It just feels lighter, maybe. I don't know. I guess I'll have an idea as I start to knit. One thing I did learn with the Nutidin, because I had cast on the Moorland mittens in it, is it doesn't like to be frogged a heck of a lot. So I had a little bit of a trouble with a cast on with the Nutidin and with the unspun in general. And a few people said they had zero problems with a long tail cast on. I I didn't like the edge of it. So when I cast on in the Nutiden, the little edge piece here on the base of the, what would be the cuff of the sleeve, I wasn't thrilled with. And so because I knew that with the Moreland mittens, when I cast those on and just was not feeling that, I was thinking the yarn took a little bit more for me to get used to. And I had knit with Plotalope years ago, but this was coming apart way more. And I was probably nervous about it because it was so hard to get the Nutiden and waiting for shop updates and what have you. So I probably was tense about it. But at any rate, I was kind of struggling there. And then when I was looking at the pattern, I was thinking, how am I going to cable this? If I'm struggling to like knit a rib, I have zero business cabling this. And that's why I decided to like frog what was there. So I had asked online, and the general consensus was the knit on as a cast on. And I thought that might be a good option. I really, when I cast on using long tail and didn't like the way it looked, I thought maybe a German cast on would be nice because I'm going right into a 1x1 rib. But I couldn't get the not Plotalope, but the Nutiden to behave for me in doing that. It was just, I couldn't hold it the way I typically would and tension it and pull, etc. So I think if I were holding it with a lace weight, then maybe I would have a little more leeway. And that was also discussed in the thread as to whether or not to hold the Plotalope or the Nutiden with a lace weight and then not continue that, just hold it during the cast on. And that is definitely something that I would consider going forward, working with that kind of yarn. 100% would consider that. So that concludes like my knitting portion. I have not been crocheting. I don't think I have done, I've spun. I've been spinning the chocolate covered chocolate, I don't even like chocolate, but the chocolate colored merino that was drafted years ago in Sacramento, actually. But at any rate, so I'm still spinning that. I have one full bobbin. The bobbin that's on the wheel right now is almost totally full. And then I'll spin another bobbin, and I'm just gonna ply like that because I don't have my other bobbins from my loom and things here. So I'm gonna spin 3 and ply 3. And normally when I'm spinning a lot of wool for a big project, I will spin and then kind of shuffle my bobbins around so that I'm not, I'm having a more consistent yarn that's totaling the 1800 yards or 1500 yards or whatever it is that I want. But I don't have a bobbin winder here, and I really, it looks as though my spinning is pretty even this time around, so I feel fairly comfortable. I'm thinking that, or my hope is that it can become the Billy pullover, because I have the Cinnamon Girl cardigan, which is all over cabling, which I love. I believe that's by Amy Christoffers, I believe. Is it Christoffers? But I'm not entirely sure if that's what that's going to become. Well, but I'll keep going. The 2 fleeces that I brought to White River Junction Fiber Mill, and I didn't realize they had just opened this last year, but at any rate, I brought them to them to be pin drafted, and there were 2. One was the chocolate colored merino, and that because of it was ranked well in the fleece in Rhinebeck, but it had uneven staple length. And so there was a little bit of a concern as to whether or not it would go through the pin drafter drafting machine well or not. And so I said, well, let's just see what happens. Well, it turned out that the 7-pound oatmeal colored fleece was the one that couldn't go through. The staple length on it was just too long. So I'm trying not to be exceedingly disappointed, because that means I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to spin this. Now, so if you have some sort of insight as to, like, I'm talking like a 7-inch staple length of this merino, very fine. And I am not opposed to combing it, although combing is not my favorite preparation. And I'm going to be very honest about that. I was hoping to avoid hand carding. That's why I was going to have it drafted at the mill and just enjoy the spinning process. So would you or recommend, or in your experience, asking like online in my local community to see if someone has a drum carder, and maybe they would be willing to like have me drum card a couple bats and spin from them, or hand carding roulades and like fill a basket and then work from that and then go hand card more. I mean, 7 pounds is a lot to kind of work through. And like I said, I really don't want to have to do it, but I'm wondering with that staple length, should I really be taking advantage of that staple length and spinning it worsted and not woolen? So at any rate, so that's where we are with spinning. I have not sewn anything. I've been braiding the rug. I think it's about at 4.5 feet by 3.5 feet right now. So my goal is by next weekend to have it be up another foot. So 5.5 by 4.5 is the goal. Which, as the further you expand outward, the more material and longer that process takes, because it's getting bigger and bigger. So, you know, it's eating up more and more material. And I don't cut my wool a lot ahead. As a sewist, I look at the wool and value it in more than just as a braider. So I kind of like, I'm gonna hold off a little and cut as I go. This way, if I happen to have a considerable amount left of a certain pattern or what have you, I can make a cute little jumper for the youngest or something along those lines with it. So yeah, in the sewing front, I'll put these up here, the clasps. And the sewing front, I got the wool kit from Primitive Gatherings, and this I think is the December box, and it's for hand applique with using wool, and it's creating blocks. So I'm not exactly sure what it's going to ultimately become. I think what I need to do with it is open the packages would probably help, but like some of the pieces, the blocks have flannel. They're a brushed flannel, and then you're putting wool on top of the flannel, which is common. And some of the blocks that come are all wool. So I think what I'm going to do is work on them and put them aside. I don't think I have any in Vermont of the cases I usually use for my quilt things, but they're the 12-inch by 12-inch or 10, like a cat like freaked out on the stairwell, or a 10-inch by 10-inch scrapbooking case, and it's perfect for keeping the blocks flat and safe, not the edges aren't fraying and what have you. So I don't know, I've just been really focused on the knitting, and I think I'm going to have to look in my Ravelry, but I think this Vintersol might be done in less than a week or a week. And that would be really, really, that's really awesome to me, to knit a full-size garment with color work in that period of time. No, it's going to be more than a week, because I had gone to the LYS last week to work on the yoke. There's always women knitting there, and or people knitting there, and so it was nice to just get out for a little bit, and that's what I did. So I had just cast on the day or two before that, so it'll be about a week and a half. So I may set myself a goal for the other sweater to be done in a week. We'll see. Anyway, so thank you again for listening or watching, and if you would hit the like and subscribe. It's helpful for the algorithms and for the channel, and encouraging, none to say the least. Leave a comment if you so wish, especially if you have some insight of something that I might have missed, or that you'd like to hear. Otherwise, I can be found as Sydneyknits on Ravelry, or emailed at the Housewife-podcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, have a fantastic week and stay safe.